Un gusto poder estar en este espacio.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Roxana Borda Mamani. I'm from Peru, from the Quechua peoples from Cusco, and I'm here on behalf of the Youth Network of Latin America, and it's a pleasure for me to be here.
Je suis Madame Georgette Bilondampenda, je suis de la République démocratique du Congo. Je suis présidente et fondatrice de l'ONG Club UNESCO Centre d'action femmes et enfants.
Est-ce que vous pouvez juste répéter votre prénom, s'il vous plaît?
Georgette.
Okay, Georgette. Hello everyone. Hello everyone.
Wait a second.
Oh. Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Georgette. I'm from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Est-ce que vous pourriez répéter les organisations, s'il vous plaît?
Je suis présidente
I'm the president.
de club ONG Club UNESCO.
Okay, of a club, a UNESCO NGO.
Femmes et enfants.
For women and children.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Tom Duncanson. I am a longtime university teacher in the United States, and I operate a very tiny organization called the Green Citizen Diplomacy Project.
Thank you. We have the people online who are speaking. We hear you, Merem.
Hello. Can I speak? Hello, I'm Dr. Vinitae Aapte from India. I run an organization dedicated to environment and climate change named Terre. Terre means Earth in French, and we stand for technology, education, research, and rehabilitation for the environment. We are in forest development, watershed development, environment education,
Elle gère une association qui s'occupe un peu
and
du
many
développement technique
other
autour des questions
climate
climatiques.
change fighters.
Et ils se battent contre
We
le
are not
changement
activists, but
climatique,
we are
notamment dans la
doing
jeunesse.
and we are working to fight the climate change.
Et on est très déterminés à combattre
Thank
les
you.
effets négatifs du dérèglement climatique.
Yeah. Oh, we can just. Merem, do you want to start with your speech?
For those don't know me, I'm a Maritime, I'm a law student, and I'm a leader of my Indigenous Ga people. I'm the first representative of my Indigenous people of the north of Chad, and I'm a representative of the association Les Femmes de la Diaspora Tchadienne, in English, Women of Chadian Diaspora. We're working in Chad, Libya, Sudan, and Niger. And we're working also in France with the refugee people and with the Chad culture authorities. And I decided to start officially my engagement with my Ga people in the COP27. And after I was in the CSW and the UN Water Conference, and now here, because it's important to have a voice of youth indigenous people. In the north of Chad, we have a lot of climate change, in particular in the north, and we don't have a lot of NGO or institution working with us because the insecurity. And I want to show the world is not Chad in general, and in the north of Chad is not only insecurity. We have a lot of problems. We have a lot of truth, and we need people who connect with us to working together about climate change. And I have to share with you some things amazing who do my Indigenous Ga people. They are resilient people who doing everything to keep your heritage culture. For example, we have an application who translates the Indigenous language with the French, Arabic, and English too. And now it's important to have youth in the climate change, because youth, we are the future, and this is your voice. And we want people who don't say just the youth, they are not lost experiences and other things. We have experiences in the areas of North of Chad, and we need more people talking about the situation of the North of Chad and other indigenous people like Roxana. Let Roxana speak about her indigenous people.
Ah, señor en español. Ay. Bueno, allí en Suca, Yapayakichiswan, estoy hablando en quechua. Buenas tardes con cada uno de ustedes. Y bueno, tengo corto tiempo. Básicamente lo que voy a comentarles es, bueno, también vengo en nombre de la Red de Jóvenes Indígenas Latinoamérica, más como una visión que se tiene, que se ha elaborado, no solo a nivel de Perú, sino a nivel regional de Latinoamérica.
Well, first, good evening. She said it in Quechua, in her mother language. I can't say it again, repeat it. I want to talk about a vision we as a regional network of young people made up, not only from Peru, but from all the region of Latin America.
El presente se llama Telares de Vida. Es un informe regional sobre la realidad y el contexto en el cual viven los jóvenes y las juventudes indígenas en Latinoamérica.
Voy a resumir. I will sum up a report that came up one or some weeks ago, where we as young people, or where the situation of young people in Latin America and young indigenous people especially is described. So I will sum up this report, and my speech is based on it.
El presente informe se trabajó en coordinación con el Fondo de Desarrollo para Pueblos Indígenas de América Latina y el Caribe, que es el FILAG, y en conjunto con la Red de Jóvenes Indígenas y Latinoamérica.
The present report was founded by FILAC, the Latin American Indigenous Peoples Fund, and the Young People's Fund of Latin American Indigenous.
El presente informe sirve como insumo sustancial y también considero importante para que los gobiernos puedan tomar en consideración al tomar decisiones en las negociaciones, como en este caso, sobre todo en temas de cambio climático.
And this report should be a very, very important part or input for governments on our local and regional level to go on with integrating young peoples from Latin America more in the processes, especially indigenous peoples from Latin America, integrate them more in the processes of climate change fighting.
También abarca temas como el concepto que es ser joven indígena, porque cada país, cada nación, cada pueblo tiene un concepto diferente en relación que es ser juventud indígena.
And as well, there is a part of the report presenting the actual situation of indigenous youth in Latin America, presenting what it is to be an indigenous young woman or man. So just to get into the topic, they are presenting more of what is actually the situation to get to know more about it.
Okay. Además de ello, también hay una parte fundamental dentro del informe que menciona sobre las juventudes como agentes de cambio, que estamos hablando justamente en temas de cambio climático. Aparte de ello, también menciona sobre las soluciones, las perspectivas, las acciones que tienen realizando diferentes jóvenes desde sus territorios, desde sus contextos reales, desde sus localidades.
In one part, the indigenous youth is presented as an agent of change, and as well, it is in another part presenting different ways, different actions that are taken by indigenous young leaders to fight climate and combat climate change.
Como este informe es una de las iniciativas que también las juventudes vienen aportando, ¿no? Que también es necesario que también pueda servir como referencia para que en otras regiones también puedan hacer. Como verán, las juventudes vienen trabajando desde diferentes ángulos, áreas, ¿no? Que puedan contribuir más. Estos, por ejemplo, este informe, al igual como otras recomendaciones, tienen que ser tomadas en cuenta para también poder contribuir en temas de cambio climático.
And this report as well can be taken, the sites of indigenous youth in Latin America can be taken as an example for other regions, so they can adapt, and it could be served to be a model of how to combat maybe climate change, and this is very important.
Okay. Algo más específico es sobre todo, ¿no? El problema que se está quejando en diferentes regiones, sobre todo en temas de seguridad alimentaria y soberanía alimentaria, y cómo ella también está relacionada con temas de cambio climático y la pérdida de biodiversidad, que es fundamental. O sea, al perder los sistemas alimentarios, están perdiendo también los conocimientos, las prácticas que tienen las comunidades y pueblos indígenas.
And it's focusing on different topics that are especially in indigenous communities a danger. For example, in ¿qué eran los?
Seguridad alimentaria y soberanía.
Sicherheit, Ernährungssicherheit auf Englisch.
Food security.
Food security, and other topics that are very important and especially taking place in indigenous communities and in the present.
Okay. Justamente este año, 2023, el lema en temas de seguridad alimentaria está como la seguridad alimentaria como impulso para hacer frente a la crisis climática. O sea, lo que quiere decir es que nosotros, el pueblo, o mejor dicho, la población mundial, necesita cambiar ese proceso de transición hacia el uso sostenible de sus alimentos, al sistema de producción que tiene, al sistema de consumo que tenemos, que estamos todos embarcados en ello, y cómo ello, viendo así como sistemas, por ejemplo, la agroecología, ¿no? Cómo ella puede abordar o colaborar a hacer frente a la crisis climática que estamos. Porque antiguamente los pueblos producían de forma sostenible, de forma limpia, pero actualmente estamos más basados en temas de la producción de los monocultivos. Ni siquiera esos alimentos son para consumo humano, sino son para consumo, para sustento de animales, ¿no? Entonces es básicamente el sistema en el que estamos, ¿no? Y cómo está afectando lo que es al planeta como tal. Y también cómo es que ella está interrelacionada con la pérdida de biodiversidad. Cada vez más estamos como que avanzando hacia depredación, hacia más expansión de terrenos, y los terrenos están como que quedando como pobres.
In this year, 2023, the focus is on food security, because in indigenous communities as well, we are facing a lot of problems with our own proper food production. In the past, we were more executing our traditional ways to produce our food, but now, as well, we as indigenous peoples are changing our ways to produce food, our motive to produce food. Now we are in a lot of spaces not longer producing just for ourselves sustainably, but for our farm animals or for a bigger market. So as well, the project tries to face this change, or maybe a back change to our more traditional knowledges, and especially with the young leaders of indigenous communities, to inform, to exchange what was actually the traditional land use of our peoples.
Sí, justamente en marco de temas de seguridad alimentaria, el año pasado fue lanzada la campaña de cero desperdicio de alimentos. Este año también se va a reforzar la campaña, ¿no? Que todos seamos conscientes de lo que estamos consumiendo, la cantidad necesaria que debemos consumir. O sea, podernos, como que digo, educarlos en esa parte, ¿no? Es más lo que hay un gran porcentaje de lo que se pierde, lo que uno llega en el proceso de que el alimento llega hacia las grandes ciudades, ¿no? Aparte de ello, debemos recordar que los pequeños productores, los agricultores, los pueblos son quienes también abastecen a esto. Entonces, es también dar el valor agregado, el tema de las cadenas cortas, en temas de alimentación, sobre todo en la logística.
So in these years, we have a project where we want to emphasize more on the topic of food that is lost on the way of production and of consume. So as well in our food changes, Ketten, chains, we are losing a lot of food. It's not very effective how we are producing and bringing the food we are producing to the consumers. So in these processes as well, we do capacity buildings so our communities can improve it to adapt to the different situation through climate change.
Okay, casi para terminar, es importante que se mire hacia los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales, cómo es que ellos están produciendo, tener en consideración la toma de decisiones antes, ¿no? Y sobre todo valorar los conocimientos ancestrales, los conocimientos autóctonos, prácticas que los pueblos practican aún, tienen aún. Y es por eso que aún algunos alimentos, algunos sistemas alimentarios están vivos. Pero sin embargo, ya cuando hablamos con temas de cambio climático, actualmente están siendo afectados sus sistemas de producción, algunos semillas, pérdida de semillas, métodos de trabajo, algunas hay sequías, hay una variación tremenda en temas de cambio climático. Y son esos pueblos que están siendo afectados, golpeados por el tema de los efectos que se tienen.
And at the end, I want to say that we should as well look from a perspective out of indigenous communities and learn from the models, the traditional models. They have to produce their food, for example, in this example. And it's important to learn how on this local level it is possible to produce food, to maintain the seeds for the food. How to interact with when there comes a drought or something, to learn from it and to adapt it and to see this.
Okay. Otra parte también cuando estamos hablando de cambio climático estamos hablando de agua, tierra, energía. Entonces 3 elementos están interrelacionados. Sin embargo, están siendo afectados. Entonces, aparte también se está, por temas de desplazamiento y demás cosas, demás factores, está afectando también a los pueblos. Si uno no garantiza el acceso a territorio, demarcación, el tema de derechos, entonces también está afectando a los pueblos y con ello también la pérdida de los mismos, ¿no? Ahora está muy golpeado el tema por ejemplo, para empezar la lengua. Sí, el idioma, la lengua como tal de los pueblos.
So for us, it's very important to see the relation between land, water, and energy. For us, all this is interconnected, and it's important to be aware of this and facing climate change, always seeing these points. We are as well affected a lot by displacement. And and need to change a lot of times our spaces, and facing this, it's very important to have a good strategy to face this, seeing climate change as well.
Es por eso que muchos acaban a ver en esa reunión que muchos pueblos están viniendo organizados, viendo las formas mecanismos de cómo llegar aquí, porque lastimosamente a veces no hay financiamiento para ellos, para que puedan llegar. Y necesitan, tienen que llegar todavía a esos espacios para que puedan hacer frente, para menos levantar su voz y dar a conocer al mundo sobre las problemáticas que tienen, ¿no? Entonces los pueblos están organizados, están planteando sus soluciones. Y es fundamental que se pongan también en consideración al momento de las negociaciones climáticas.
And the last point is as well the travel of a lot of indigenous peoples to these conferences. In a lot of times it's very difficult for us to finance or to get financed by NGOs or other actors. But it's very important because we are agent of change, and it's very important for us to be here to present our perspective on the topics that are discussed over there in the panel.
Ok, muchas gracias. Sí, solo para cerrar, también quería invitarlos que puedan acceder a la plataforma. Hay una plataforma de pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales que es una plataforma justamente sirve para intercambio de conocimientos. Hay varios materiales que pueden acceder, están en cinco idiomas, ¿no? Que hay diferentes a nivel global, han colocado sugestiones, recomendaciones, están los resúmenes, están diferentes materiales que pueden hacer uso de ella, y también sobre todo para informar, tener acceso a información. Pero también es fundamental llevar eso hacia nuestros estados, hacia los pueblos, que pueda llegar a más espacios. Porque lo que pasa es que, por ejemplo, cuando uno va a una comunidad así pequeña, específica, le pregunta qué es la ONU, ¿conoce algo así? Dice, no conocen, porque justamente la información no llega a estos lugares.
And to end, I want to invite you as well to enter this platform of indigenous advocates as well, that is presenting in 5 different languages these reports and this information. And it's important to share to share it more, because mostly we enter our communities, our own communities, and no one is knowing these important reports that can help in the specific cases. And so I just invite you to enter it maybe after the event and watch it. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Madame Georgette Bulonda, présidente de l'ONG CUCAFE, comme je l'avais dit.
So my name is Georgette Bulanda.
Notre ONG a 2 visions.
Our NGO has 2 visions:
Sensibilisation
awareness
et renforcement des capacités.
and capacity building.
Justement, nous sensibilisons de tout ce qui est adaptation et des solutions résilientes pour lutter contre le changement climatique.
So we raise awareness on everything linked to adaptation and also on climate change related topics.
La fois passée, c'était la COP 28.
Last time it was COP27.
Depuis le début, on a toujours parlé de projets, mais jusque-là, il n'y a pas d'activité.
And we have been talking about projects, but there has never been activity.
Aujourd'hui, je vais parler en profondeur sur la justice climatique.
Today I would like to go a bit more in depth into climate justice.
J'ai préparé un petit discours, un petit mot, et vous allez traduire.
So I prepared a little speech that I'm going to read to you.
Mesdames et messieurs distingués invités, aujourd'hui, je voudrais partager avec vous une réflexion profonde sur la question cruciale de la justice climatique.
Dear invitees, today I would like to share with you a deep reflection on the crucial question of climate justice.
En mettant l'accent sur les autochtones, les femmes et les enfants pauvres.
Shedding light on the indigenous peoples, women and poor children.
Le changement climatique ne fait pas de distinction entre les personnes, mais il frappe de manière disproportionnée les groupes les plus vulnérables de notre société.
Climate change doesn't distinguish between people, but it does affect in disproportionate ways the group of people who are most vulnerable in our societies.
Il est essentiel que nous examinions ces réalités avec compassion, et que nous agissions pour remédier à ces injustices.
It is crucial that we observe these realities with compassion and that we act to palliate, to remedy to these injustices.
Les autochtones, c'est-à-dire les gardiens de terre, depuis des temps immémoriaux, sont en première ligne face aux conséquences des changements climatiques.
The indigenous peoples, the guardians of the earth since immemorial times, are in first line in facing the consequences of climate change.
Leur mode de vie traditionnel et leur dépendance étroite vis-à-vis de la nature les exposent aux effets dévastateurs de la déforestation, de la désertification et de l'élévation du niveau de la mer.
Their traditional ways of living and their dependency and their tight dependency with nature and their environment expose them to the devastating effects of deforestation, of desertification, and of the rise of the sea levels.
Prenons l'exemple de la communauté inuite dans l'Arctique canadien qui a vu les glaces marines se retirer à une vitesse alarmante.
Let's take the example of the Inuit community in the Canadian Arctic, which has seen les glaces marines.
Les glaces, oui, les glaces, oui.
Who has seen its environment being degraded and melting at an alarming speed.
Leur mode de vie, leur mode de subsistance basé sur la chasse et la pêche est menacé, mettant en péril leur culture et leur identité profondément enracinées.
Their ways of living, which is based on subsistence. Yeah, their means of subsistence, which is based on hunting and on fishing, is in peril and is putting in danger their culture and their identity, which is deeply rooted in them.
Il est de notre devoir de protéger leurs droits ancestraux, de protéger leur savoir écologique et de les impliquer activement dans la recherche de solutions pour un avenir durable.
It is our duty to protect their ancestral rights, to preserve their ecological knowledge, and to implicate them actively in the quest for looking for solutions for a sustainable future.
Les femmes, en tant que piliers de nombreuses communautés, sont également durement touchées par les impacts du changement climatique.
Women, as the pillars of many communities, are also quite abruptly touched by the effects of climate change.
Elles jouent un rôle crucial dans la sécurité alimentaire, dans la gestion des ressources naturelles et le bien-être familial.
They have a crucial role in food security, in the allocation of environmental resources, and in the health and the well-being of families.
Cependant, elles sont souvent confrontées à des défis supplémentaires. Prenons l'exemple des femmes rurales dans les pays en développement. Cependant, elles sont souvent confrontées.
But they are still confronted to other challenges. For example, women living in rural areas in countries which are still developing.
Elles doivent parcourir de plus longues distances pour trouver de l'eau potable en raison de la sécheresse croissante.
They have to walk for very, very long distances to find drinkable water because of the drought problems, which are getting more and more frequent.
Les femmes sont également confrontées à des inégalités économiques, sociales accrues.
Women are also confronted to greater economic and social inequalities because the resources are diminishing and their conditions of life are deteriorating.
Alors, quelle solution? Nous devons créer des opportunités pour les femmes de s'émanciper, de renforcer leur résilience et de jouer un rôle actif dans des décisions politiques et environnementales.
So, what solutions do we have? We have to create more opportunities for women, for them to emancipate, to reinforce their resilience, and to play an active role in political and environmental decision-making.
Enfin, il est essentiel de reconnaître que ce sont les enfants ou la jeunesse qui est l'avenir de demain, pauvres, qui subiront les conséquences les plus graves du changement climatique à l'avenir.
At last, it is essential to recognize that it is the poor children who are going to face the most terrible consequences of climate change in the future.
Des millions d'enfants dans les régions les plus défavorisées du monde sont confrontés à la faim, à la malnutrition, à l'insécurité alimentaire, à la pauvreté extrême qui sont exacerbées par le bouleversement climatique.
Millions of children in the regions which are less favorized in the world are confronted to hunger, to ill nutrition, to food insecurity, and to extreme poverty. And these problems are getting even more dire because of climate change.
Considérons les enfants des communautés agricoles d'Afrique subsaharienne dont les récoltes sont anéanties par la sécheresse récurrente.
For example, children in the agricultural communities in sub-Saharan Africa can see the products of their agricultural work destroyed by regular droughts.
L'absence de la nourriture adéquate les prive de la possibilité de grandir en bonne santé, d'apprendre et de réaliser leur plein potentiel.
The absence of adequate food is depriving them from the possibility to grow strong and healthy, to learn and to fulfill and grow up to their entire potential.
Il est de notre devoir moral de protéger et de préserver leurs droits à un avenir sûr et prospère.
It is our moral duty to protect and to preserve their rights to a safe and prosperous future.
Ces histoires, bien que déchirantes, sont des rappels poignants de notre responsabilité collective envers la justice climatique.
These stories, although they are most poignant, are important reminders of our collective responsibility towards climate justice.
Nous devons passer de la sensibilisation à l'action concrète.
We need to move from raising awareness to concrete actions.
Cela signifie réduire nos émissions de gaz à effet de serre, investir dans des ressources d'énergie renouvelables et adopter des pratiques agricoles durables.
This means reducing our greenhouse gases emissions, invest in renewable energies, and adopt sustainable agricultural practices.
Cela signifie également soutenir les communautés autochtones dans leurs efforts de résilience et d'adaptation en reconnaissant et en respectant leurs droits fonciers.
This also means that we need to support Indigenous communities in their effort towards resilience and adaptation by recognizing their property rights over their own land.
Cela signifie encore autonomiser les femmes en leur fournissant des ressources, des compétences et des opportunités pour jouer un rôle actif dans la prise de décisions environnementales.
This also means making women more autonomous, allowing women to be more autonomous, by giving them resources, knowledge, competencies, and opportunities for them to play an active role in environmental decision-making.
Et enfin, en conclusion, ensemble, nous pouvons construire un avenir plus juste et durable, où les voix des autochtones sont écoutées, où les femmes sont pleinement impliquées et où les enfants pauvres ont la possibilité de grandir et de s'épanouir. Engageons-nous dès aujourd'hui à faire preuve de solidarité, d'empathie et de détermination pour un monde meilleur pour tous. Je vous remercie.
So together we can build a future which is more equal and just, a future where Indigenous voices will be heard, where women will be fully implicated, and where poor children will be able to grow up and be themselves fully. So please let's engage ourselves today to support values of solidarity, empathy, and let's be determined for a better world for everyone. Thank you.
I think it's important to go right past me because there are other speakers in the room, and I think there's some more online.
Dr. Oya, can you speak now? Thank you. Manassa, would you like to speak now? Is Manassa there? Is he there? Is the next speaker there, please? Dr. Oya, are you there? Manassa, are you there? Are you not there in the room? Are you not there in the room? I can't see.
I will continue. I think there are some trouble for you. Donc, I will speak here. I'm indigenous people of the north of Chad, who are the Ga, and we have no representative except me. And so I'm here to use my skill to defend the justice climatic in Chad, especially as a young indigenous woman. And when you come in the north of Chad, you will see the Ga women have resilient and work hard to conserve your environment. And I'm disappointed to see that because a large number of indigenous people don't speak a Western language, people are thinking they don't have education or other things. But let's work together to see that how indigenous people knowledge is important to fight the climate change. I want to talk to you about the situation in the north of Chad about the consequence of mercury in the Chad. Mercury is part of the world's most dangerous chemical product regarding the environment in the long run. Despite Chad being a signature of the Minamata Convention, mercury can be found in the body product, and which have dirty consequences with women and children. In the gold planning in zone of Tibesti, a minor or dirty contact with the mercury which can use in health issues that affect the body system. The youth are often at often risk of the cancer. The message I would like to say you, it's about the care of the role its NGO and institution to play in helping the climate change in Africa, because you are most affected about climate change, especially in the Chad. By hearing from the Chadan people, you can have a solution, but we can talk with the solution in the climate crisis without keep your culture. It's very important, and I want like other youth like me and Roxana to share your recommendation and people you can hear you, because we're thinking you are loose and you don't have a lot of experience or skill. But we know your region, especially in Chad, and we need to have people in the science understand the knowledge of indigenous people. Can you, Doctor, introduce your face, please?
They are not hearing you when this is disappearing.
I'm just saying, I think it'd be better if we had Vinitae and Dorothy who are online and ready to speak, I think. Maybe Merem can direct this a little bit.
Yes, I can't actually see what's happening there, but my understanding was that Dr. Manassa was going to speak. Is he in the room? Is he able to speak?
Dr. Manasta? Nobody's identifying themselves that way, and I don't know this person.
Okay, thank you very much. And then the next person would be Professor Etishamabasi online. Okay, so if you would like 5 minutes maximum, please, if you would like to give an intervention. And Professor Abbasi is from India and is one of our trustees and is a professor in Morocco at the moment. So finance and economics and accounting. Over to you for 5 minutes maximum. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much. Respected Miss Merem Tahar and respected Mrs. Miriam Kennett. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak at this August Conference of United Nations. My name is Professor Etishamabasi. I work as Professor of Accounting at Al University in Morocco. Also faculty. I'm also faculty at American Higher Education Alliance Academy and plus an economist at Green Economics Institute of UK. Today I'm going to dwell on the topic of the biggest polluters and their spending on environment versus military. So as a matter of fact, world's mightiest and economies of the world spend most of their funds on defense. In the year 2020, United States spent $758 billion US dollars, China $252 billion US dollars, India $72.9 billion US dollars, Russia $61.7 billion dollars, UK $59.2 billion, Germany $52.8 and France $52.7 billion dollars, Japan $49.1 billion US dollars. Ironically, almost the same countries are the biggest emitters of greenhouse gas, and they share almost 68.71% or 2/3 of the total emission. So the top emitters are China, United States, European Union with 27 nations, India, Russia, Japan, Brazil, Indonesia, Iran, and Canada. And if we compare these countries' military spending with environmental spending, the big question is that how much these countries are spending to become net zero. So I have tried to find the environmental spending of these countries, but unfortunately, I couldn't find for all the biggest economies of the world. I found the data on environment, protection, or climate change spending of only two countries, that is UK and China. So UK spent 12.6 billion pounds from 1996 to 2021, and China did 500 billion yuan from 2012 to 2021. I couldn't find the actual spending from any other country like United States, India, Russia, Germany, France, and Japan. So the message is loud and clear that which sector is the priority for all these the strongest and leading economies of the world. So, but the challenge of climate change is so great that in every 1 minute, 13 people die in all over the world, and 3 in India because of air pollution. 70 million people are at danger of death because of air pollution. So who is responsible for this much of social cost of carbon footprints? And who is responsible for impact of climate change on agriculture and livelihood? Who is accountable for effect of climate change on wildlife? So the matter of the fact is that we need intelligent, empathetic, honest, and futuristic leaders, because we have to move on to solve other and more pressing issues like economic disparity, free and quality education for all, hunger-free world, best health care for all, women empowerment, and above all, happiness for all. That's all for today. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then we have Dorothy Nalibega, who speaks from the UK and is from Uganda. She's also one of the trustees of the Green Economics Institute and is a climate and feminist activist and very active in environmental issues. Can I hand over to you, Dorothy, for 5 minutes? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miriam, and thank you very much, our moderator, Madam Merem, and our previous speakers. Yeah, Dorothy here from Uganda, but calling from UK, and a gay trustee. I'll try to keep it to the 5 minutes given to me. So I'll go straight to our theme question. Who needs to do the heavy lifting to keep within 1.5 degrees of warming? I would like to say it's everybody, but it starts with you. Much as one doesn't want to hear it, it starts with you. You can start by changing your consumer behavior to reduce your carbon footprint. Reduce, reuse, switch off lights you're not using, reuse plastic bags. Why do you buy winter coat every winter and blame industries for producing them and emitting the greenhouse gas while they're manufacturing those coats that you change every winter? The next people responsible are the civil society organizations, especially UN bodies, international organizations, and all other NGOs. This can go a long way in this battle, especially when it comes to the issue of intersectionality, which is a very big problem in combating climate crisis. They can help to amplify the voices of those groups who suffer double through supporting environmental and human rights activists. You are all aware that you cannot separate these two. Human rights and environment are interrelated, and it is civil society organizations that normally try to solve the problems of gender inequalities, which cause people from different races and different genders to suffer double when it comes to climate crisis. They also help to educate masses. When you're in this room and you're in the climate change fight, you may not know and you may not believe, but some people don't know about the climate crisis. The next people should be the policymakers, like the legislators in parliament, the councillors at local levels. They should pass laws and policies that aim to reduce climate crisis. Because much as we, the activists, shout and demonstrate and talk, when there is no environmental law to check the acts of environmental degraders, to prosecute climate change criminals, we cannot achieve much. We need the law, and it should be put in practice, not only on paper. The other group of people, Professor Elsham has already mentioned, so I will not dwell much on those people. The big polluters, especially the G7, it is their responsibility, but they just don't have the political will to stop this. So it should be upon them to act, because they pollute and let other people who do less in emissions to suffer the consequences. Lastly, in all this, there is this big stakeholder who needs to do the heavy lifting to keep within 1.5 degrees of warming, and that is the government of states. However much we others try, if the governments are not willing, there is no London taxi driver the other day about how he finds his new electric car. And he said it was very expensive, not only to buy, but also to maintain. Tell me, if we are asking people to change from fossil fuels, cars, to electric ones, how will they be convinced after what the taxi driver said? No. It is therefore upon governments, for example, to create subsidies or to waive taxes in order to make the energy transition possible, which is what we mainly need to keep within the 1.5 degrees of warming. I thank you.
Thank you very much, and very much on message. So this side event is about how in the global stocktake who's going to do the heavy lifting to keep within the Paris boundary of 1.5 degrees of warming. And our contention at the Green Economics Institute and with our partners is always that intersectionality, diversity, inclusion is the way forward. Nature is diverse, nature is not homogeneous, and humans have made a mistake by being too homogeneous in the last 10,000 years. So now we must have diversity. And as we know, indigenous peoples we now know, created the Amazon rainforest, and therefore they may have many of the answers that we seek. So it's diversity, that is the message of this side event. So with that in mind, can we now go to our next speaker, Tasneem Sabri, who has been doing research at university on the role of Indigenous communities and how they can lead on climate change. Over to you, Tasneem, for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tasneem Sabri. Today I'll be addressing a critical question that has been at the forefront of climate change discussions. Who needs to do the heavy lifting to keep within 1.5 degrees of warming? The answer is clear. Developed nations must take the lead. Why? Because they have been historically responsible for the majority of greenhouse gas emissions, and they possess the resources to invest in renewable energy and climate finance. The Paris Agreement aims to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. To achieve this goal, all countries must work together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Developed countries should take greater responsibility since they are responsible for around 79% of historical carbon emissions. However, it is fundamental to recognize that the conversation on climate change cannot just be dominated by the voices of developed nations. We must spotlight alternative voices and perspectives that have traditionally been marginalized or ignored. Indigenous communities, for example, have long been the stewards of their land and have a wealth of traditional knowledges on sustainable practices. Their deep connection with nature and the land makes their input invaluable. By giving them a platform and amplifying their voices, we can tap into their wisdom and incorporate it into global climate agendas. Their participation in decision-making processes ensures that climate actions are inclusive, equitable, and respects the rights and aspirations of Indigenous people. Embracing nature-based solutions rooted in Indigenous knowledge not only strengthens climate resilience, but also fosters cultural diversity and social justice. Indigenous people often face disproportionate impacts from climate change, such as loss of traditional lands, resources, and cultural heritage. Therefore, it is essential that we prioritize their needs and aspirations in the transition to a low-carbon economy. This includes providing support for sustainable livelihoods, preserving cultural heritage, and involving Indigenous leaders in the decision-making processes at all levels. By doing so, we can build a more inclusive and resilient future for all. Furthermore, we must address the issue of loss and damage caused by climate change. Despite our best efforts, some impacts are already inevitable due to past and present emissions. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has issued a warning that many of the present climate impacts are irreversible, labeling the crisis as code red for humanity. To address these losses, the Loss and Damage Fund established at COP27 must have clear lines of where funding is flowing and how communities are being compensated. This fund should provide financial assistance to the most vulnerable communities that are facing the severe consequences of climate change. The establishment of the Loss and Damage Fund acknowledges our shared responsibility for the damages caused by climate change and provides a compensation mechanism for supporting those who are disproportionately affected. This fund should prioritise the needs of developing nations and vulnerable communities, ensuring the burden of climate change is not unfairly shifted to those who have contributed the least to the problem. In conclusion, addressing climate change requires the leadership of developed nations to take responsibility for their historical emissions and invest in sustainable solutions. However, it is crucial to amplify the voices of marginalised communities, particularly Indigenous people who hold valuable knowledge and perspectives on sustainable practices. By prioritising their needs and incorporating their wisdom, we can foster a more inclusive and resilient future while ensuring that the burden of climate change is not disproportionately borne by the least responsible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lovely. Thank you. And obviously we can learn an awful lot from Indigenous people. And so I've asked during the course of this side event if perhaps the people representing the Indigenous communities, Merem, etc., can just advise us perhaps of 5 things that we can take away, that listeners can take away from this side event in order to support Indigenous communities who really have become and should be global leaders in the future of humanity and the economy and all areas. So we can think about that a little bit later on. So the next speaker is Vinitae Aapte, who is one of our partners when we bid for this side event, and she runs Terre Policy Centre in India. So we're going over to India now to speak to Vinitae, and she has 5 minutes. Are you there, Vinitae? Are you there?
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Can you put your camera on? Yes, could you put your camera on? Is that possible?
Yes, thank you so much, Miriam, for this opportunity. I'm at Delhi airport and connected here. So first of all, I will wish everyone for today's World Environment Day. And we all are leaders for making a change. And we are going to implement the strategies which Paris Agreement have given to the world. So while talking to this subject, I appreciate the earlier speakers, especially the Professor Abbasi. He had given a comprehensive picture of the finance, especially on climate and when we are talking about climate and finance. So through my organizations, we are very much working for the SDGs, and I'm sure the women leader will make an impact. Myself, I always feel that all these Indigenous people, those who are working in the communities, developing the communities, they need to implement more and more strategies, which should not be on paper and only on papers. Most of the time when we go in some kind of international meetings, we hear a lot. And when we come back, we are really somewhere the small people, especially the small groups of NGOs are lost and they need to have a guidance. So we are here a lot of good speakers and a lot of good NGOs working. For me, the women leader in NGOs should go to the grassroots level to empower the youth, to empower the women, especially the communities. We have developed communities nearby villages, and we have given the women especially the direction, how should they save their energy. We have a program of women and energy, and the village women. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, that's fine, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So these women can make a change, and I'm sure, Miriam, this initiative which we are taking about who is taking the load of this 1.5 degree centigrade is the women. We are now in this era that after the Paris Agreement, it's in 2015, now the 8 years over, and we have a very less time at our hand to start working, to implementing the strategies which we have decided in Paris Agreement. For today, I don't want to discuss a lot about the Paris Agreement, what we are doing, but we, from this today's World Environment Day, we need to work and focus on climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think you're right that actually it's diversity, it's Indigenous people, it's women, it's anyone really that hasn't had a leadership role in the last 10,000 years. And maybe with different people take over, we'll get a better result, because at the moment it's not working, as we know. I looked at the figures today for the parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it's gone up to 4.21 parts per million. When we started this, it was about 3.75. So actually it's accelerating really fast. If we look at the physics, it's really quite frightening. Something needs to be done. We need to change the way we work as a human species. And I think we need to do different things differently. So the next speakers I'd like to call upon. Can I thank Merem Tahar from the Indigenous community of Chad? I think she's got to go. Is that right, Merem? She's got to go to another meeting. Can I thank her for introducing everything and her speech and the wonderful work that she does do? Is she still in the room? Because I can't actually see whether she's in the room from here. But can I thank Merem? Indeed. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, you are. Just I really can't see anything. But can I thank you very much for the work you're doing and the guidance that you do give us? Because actually, your work is really very much a leadership work, and we very much appreciate it. And thank you for your time. And I know that because now you're becoming global leaders, which is the right thing, your time is much more in demand, and rightly so. So we thank you very much indeed for your work and for what you've done in this session. And hope very much that you will continue to guide us in the work that we need to be doing. So can I go to the next speaker? Can I thank Merem for that? Because it's really important and I'm grateful for her insight. And also the science that she brings and the information about the pollution she talked about, all of those things are really important, and the leadership, it's very important. So thank you very much, Merem, for that. So the next speaker, can I go to, I think the next one on our list is Jacquelyn Jepchirchir, who is from Kenya and who is, I don't know if she's actually speaking in Korea today. Can you speak to us for 5 minutes? And thank you so much. I think you're a social impact and policy advocate in Kenya. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Miriam. Yes, my name is Jacquelyn Jepchirchir from Kenya. I'm a social impact coordinator, a member of Green Congress Kenya, working closely with Green Dimension and employed at CUCAFE Human Rights Organization. Thank you. For this year, as we take the stock take, who needs to do the heavy lifting to keep up within the 1.5 degrees of warming? The global stock take should effectively cut across the interlinked areas of climate change and human rights to be able to better inform the change that is needed towards achieving the purpose of the Paris Agreement. This was confirmed by the Office of the High Commission of Human Rights in their submission to GST in March 2022. And their oral statement last year when they were submitting at the conference in Bonn 2022. By delaying climate action and failing to increase ambitions, parties are fueling a human rights crisis. More than a half of the world's population lives in regions of the world that are highly vulnerable to climate change impacts. The changing climate is already leading to substantial damages and irreversible losses, including adversely affecting the health of the people worldwide, causing displacement, undermining food security, and affecting livelihood and costing lives. Climate change is also a threat to democracy by increasing the risk of violence, increasing violence against women, and violent conflicts among communities. Children are particularly affected by climate change as described in the issues by OHCHR and more recent report by High Commissioner. If urgent action is not taken, such impacts are only set to grow. Our objective as Greens is basically to strengthen the voice, capacity, and influence of wider network to raise awareness of the impact and implications of climate change and promote civic education with emphasis on community-based natural resource management. Public participation in decision-making with a focus on environmental challenges of urbanization, drought response policies, and international climate change and biodiversity commitment. In Kenya, for example, Article 42 and 70 of Kenya 2010 Constitution bestows a right to a clean, healthy environment to every Kenyan. A number of initiatives, including the strengthening of an environmental tribunal, sectoral legislation, have been established and operationalized. Despite this, the environment pollution, cross-basin water transfers, and biodiversity losses continue and illustrates national policy, legislative, and implementation shortcomings. As we sit here today, stakeholders implementing environmental biodiversity conservation, climate change mitigation and adaptation initiatives are key watchdogs, and their voice in discussion on natural resource management, poverty alleviation, and environmental sustainability goals, including protection of flora, fauna, and key natural resources, such as water reservoirs, should take a lead in ensuring that our communities are well represented and well engaged in the activities that they do. We should play a very instrumental role in broadening and ensuring citizen voices in policy discussion and developing more sustainable regulations on climate change. As I conclude, the effective integration of human rights consideration across all discussions of the GST requires the consideration of the imperative for all climate actions to be grounded on specific human rights obligations and principles, such as the right to access to information and participation. These principles, such as human rights access to protection of the environment, human rights defenders, and the recognition. Most concretely, as we take stock this year, environmental organization and community-based organizations should prioritize strengthening their voices on Indigenous community engagement, capacity building, and participation for all. Thank you very much, and have a blessed day.
Thank you very much indeed. Very interesting. I think there's a common theme emerging, isn't there, that we need to listen more, we need to involve the citizens more, the citizens are a diverse group, and that actually we should have more, sorry, it just says there's 5 more minutes left in your meeting. I don't think that's right, but hopefully. Yes, so basically that people should be much more involved, and that actually leadership looks very different in the 21st century than how it has looked for the last 10,000 years. And we need to include everybody in that in order to face these challenges of both climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, health effects, all of it. Yes. So the next speaker I'd like to call upon is Lucy Kagendo from the Global Greens. Yes. If you'd like to speak for 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone, and also the previous speakers. My name is Lucy Kagendo from Kenya. The Women's Secretary for Green Congress of Kenya, and also working as a program officer for Green Dimensions Network, and also the co-convener for working group, which is for Global Greens. I'll not take so much time. I think we're almost done. Everyone has almost done everything, but I'll just say happy World Environmental Day to everyone. And say, as the world is in a critical decade for climate action, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says limiting the warming to 1.5 requires global greenhouse gases emissions to peak before 2025, and at least. And we also need to be reduced at 43% by 2030. Also, prior to COP27, the climate change published the NDC synthesis report, which summarizes the national climate plans submitted by different countries. And the report was very clear that now the countries are not actually at par or not yet there to be able to reduce this. The UN Climate Change Executive also said during the COP that to reflect the level of urgency, the gravity of the threats we are facing, and the shortness of the time we have the remaining to avoid the devastating consequences of the run with climate change. So, which is very important, that came from the Secretary. And also during the COP, countries reaffirmed their commitment to limit the global temperatures rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels. And we are putting into task our countries actually to be able to implement all this, even coming from Kenya is very important. Also, one of the things that came out is also a mitigation work program was established at Shalma aiming to urgently scale up the mitigation ambitions and implementations. The work program was to start immediately and continue until 2026, when there will be a review to consider if it will not be extended. So we are actually looking to seeing how that goes on. Also, one of the things also came out at COP27, governments were also requested to once again revisit and strengthen the 2030 targets in their national climate plans by the end of 2030, as well as accelerate the efforts towards the phase down and unbeatable coal power and phase out the inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, which is very important even as we talk about all these things. So I also want to say one of the outcomes was very important is during the COP we had the loss and damage agreement that was put, and that was to fund the vulnerable countries hit by the earth floods, the droughts, and other climate disasters. And we are looking forward to see how these will work, and with the countries not being very committed, even as we are still a few months to COP28. I can tell this that the fact that I come from Kenya, we have just come from one of the worst droughts in Kenya. We have seen people suffer, animals dying, people dying. We have people, I mean, it has been a very hard time for Kenya. And I believe had we had all these funding for loss and damage, these would have been handled very differently. Also, the other thing that I would say is the intersection between the climate change, the FGM, the early marriages are very clear in our African setup because I come from Africa. When the climate change effects are felt, that is a drought, the cattle die, the floods, then we find the communities go back to the girls and sell off and to replace, of course, to replace the cattle. So you can imagine it's not really a good time for the African girls. And also in some cases, we see some being married off, and which is not very good. Also, the girls are married off to the older men, so they actually have to drop schools, missing the education opportunities. And of course, now you find the poverty cycle continues. It's very unfortunate. So we're also holding the accountability and making sure that we're holding the businesses and institutions in our different countries responsible for this. We're also mobilizing for more, we're also asking for more financial support for developing countries, very important, so that the world combat the climate change, that is the mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, climate technology and all requirements. Sufficient funds to function, all this needs to be well put, and so that we can be able to yield better results to all this. Just to finish, because you're just finishing, I would like to say we need the implementation part of it, and to have all these happen, we need all the parties. We need the goodwill of all the governments, including me and you from the different countries we come. We need the individuals, that is me and you. Otherwise, the Mother Nature will not treat us very well. Let's come together and do the necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Can we go straight then to Tamara, please? Thank you very much. Tamara. And Tamara Kahutai is a Kenyan student at the School of Accountancy, member of the Global Greens. 5 minutes, please. Thank you very much.
My name is Tamara Kahutia, a member of the Young Green Congress of Kenya, environmental activist, a conservative activist, and I'm a member of the Friends of Nairobi National Park. I am a student. I'm doing psychology. First of all, what the global stake stock, who needs to do the heavy lifting to keep within 1.5 degrees warming? The science is clear about how to prevent increasingly dangerous and irreversible climate change impacts. This limits a global temperature which rise to 1.5 degrees, which means the cutting of GHG emission in half by 2030 and reaching a net zero CO carbon dioxide emission by mid-century. While countries, companies, and cities and investors have announced some encouraging commitments to help achieving this global goal, they are far short of what's needed. Worse still, research shows the world's highest emitting sectors are the power, the buildings, industries, transport, land, food, and agriculture aren't acting anywhere near fast enough. What needs to be done to keep the global warming below 1.5? It requires removing of carbon from the atmosphere using both natural approaches like reforestation and carbon removal technologies. What can individuals do to stop this? We can save energies at home, using energy by lowering the heat, switching off the lights in the houses, using of public transport. As a person who uses public transport in Kenya, like going to school and everything, it's advisable because of the emission of gases, and many cars produce a lot of emission, and it's advisable we start using public transports. You also considering when you're traveling, so because we all know that aeroplane burn large amount of fossil fuel, producing greenhouse emission. Ways as a student, how I can reduce global, reduce is turning off the lights, close doors immediately so heat does not escape, taking short showers, using the transport. If electricity you're not using, it should be switched off. Those are the things you can do. And what is the importance? What is the 1.5 degrees of the warming limit and its importance? This is the what impact of climate change, and its changes become larger in direct relation to more warming and every fraction. Its importance, it is to prevent the drawing over centuries of the permafrost area in range of 1.5 to 2.5. Limiting warming limits the consequences of the climate change, particularly for the vulnerable people and communities. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much indeed. Very articulate speeches from everyone. Can I thank all the speakers very much indeed? We got a global perspective there and all the issues that really are involved. And I think one of the things about what we said about this side event is who will do the heavy lifting? Who is going to save the climate? And I think what you've all said is it's us. It's not the global leaders that we have at the moment because they haven't done it. And it's not the global leaders that we had in the past because they haven't done it. It's us, it's Indigenous people, it's women, it's non-standard people, it's citizens, and it's all of us around the world. And actually, we all know there is no one on the planet now that is not impacted by climate change and biodiversity loss. We're all impacted. We're just not told about it. The media very often doesn't say. And as we said, sometimes the media is controlled by the military and therefore we're not allowed to know, but we know, you know, and we share. And I think by sharing as global citizens, we'll come together and we will save the planet, we will save humanity, we'll save, if we want, our civilization, and we'll save nature. And there's a lot of work to do, but there's no mistake. We've got 3 years to turn this round, 3 years before we lose the guardrail, 1.5 degrees of warming. So we need to act now. We need to act individually, we need to share, and we need to act together. And that's the message really, that green economics is about sharing, caring, and supporting each other in all our communities all together. There's no other way. We have to do it, and we have to love each other, we have to listen to each other, and we have to make the world a better place together and enjoy it. So thank you so much to all our wonderful, wonderful, diverse speakers. Absolutely brilliant from all over the world, right across the world. Thank you so much, and I hope the listeners enjoyed it, and I hope very much you'll join us all in this quest to save the world nicely and to save nature and to make the world a place that we can be proud of and a legacy that we can be proud of from our generation and generations to come. Thank you very much indeed, and have a wonderful day. Thanks very much to our speakers, to our chairs, to the people particularly in the room, and to all the people online, and let's hope the world's a better place. And thank you so much for your vision and your imagination. Thank you.
Thanks, Miriam.